Hey folks, today we have a gimbal video with a twist. We are using the AI tracking functionality on this Insta360 Flow to generate some pretty cool shots that you can replicate to up your mobile filmmaking game. Stewart Carroll here, pleasure to see you as always. In case you're wondering why I'm whispering and why I have the microphone this close to my mouth, we're in a new house. There's no sound deadening in here. It's a bit of a disaster for the microphone, so if I talk like this, it all gets a bit boomy and a bit awkward. Anyway, we're using an iPhone 11. It's an old phone, so anybody can replicate these shots, but what you do need to know is that we're filming on manual exposure, so we have a nice controlled shutter speed set to double the frame rate, 25 frames per second, and we have an ND filter to get that shutter speed down so we can get motion blur the eye is accustomed to seeing when watching cinematic footage. If you watch these two orbit shots side by side, you can see pretty starkly the difference that using an ND filter makes. Everybody knows how to walk around with a selfie stick and film themselves with a gimbal and a phone. That's fine, but with Deep Track, we can do better. Let's look at this example. On the assumption your phone has many cameras, if you want to use the best camera on that phone with the ND filter, then you're going to have to spin the camera around and you're not going to be able to see the screen of your phone, but it doesn't really matter. Let's do that. Triple press the trigger button on the gimbal, it spins the camera around. Like I say, you can't see yourself anymore. Single tap the trigger again to activate Deep Track. And there we go, Deep Track activated with my head locked in the center of the screen. Now this is where we can do better. Use that little joystick to reframe the position of your subject. The Deep Track stays engaged, but you can start to introduce some rule of thirds, some looking space for your talking head shots, and you can do better with these compositional opportunities. This is a very simple example, but there's two principles we're going to take across to the subsequent shots, and I want you to think about when you're doing your own shots. Think about what kind of shots you can create if you don't have to look at the camera. The tracking is doing the camera movement for you. Second of all, you can reposition the camera, create some better compositions, but still know that the tracking is doing its job, even though you've moved your subject off center. Again, this creates some interesting creative opportunities. We absolutely love these low angle hero shots. Just to have your subject stand up a little bit higher than you, point the camera up into them, rotate around, maybe have them move in the opposite direction, and you get this really cool cinematic, dare I say, looking shot. In this first example, we didn't actually use the AI tracking, just a gentle twist of the wrist and some careful movement, and you can get a good outcome. But in this next example, we did use the Deep Track 3.0, focusing on Alina's head. And not only did we get that nice rotation looking up at Alina, but we closed the distance on her, came into her as she raised up the camera. And I think the result is really, really good. Notice in this shot that after initiating the Deep Track, we reframed to get a rule of thirds based composition, mindful of what our end position was going to be, and it's Alina in the upper left third and her hands on the camera in the upper right third. She has some looking space, the composition is good. We don't always need to put our subject in the center of the frame. If you're a solo filmmaker, the AI Spotlight is perfect because here we have a little camera crew in our pocket that can track our every move. But if we throw in a little bit of filmmaking understanding, we can do better. And in this instance, we're using the camera movement to reveal a new part of the frame. It's revealing where we're walking to. This establishing shot is so much more interesting than just boom, showing the mountain or the view. We're actually turning into that shot and revealing where the subject, Alina in this case, is moving to. Same again with me coming into the frame, the camera is turning, but that motion has a purpose. It reveals the view, it reveals my location. Where am I in the frame? I'm in the upper left third of the frame, lots of looking space out to that mountain. We have a nice composition, so when the Deep Track was set up here, it locks me in the center of the frame, but we use the joystick just to knock the position off a little bit and get me into the upper left of the frame. With the AI crane, we're relying on the Deep Track to keep a lock on the subject while the height of the camera is moved up and down. Now again, we have motion for the sake of motion, that can look nice, but if the motion has purpose, then it's even better. Here we have quite a tight shot tracking Alina's head. Now as we move back to a wider angle, we reveal more of the location. That was the purpose there, to shift the viewer's attention from Alina to the location, and the Deep Track helped tremendously. It's not particularly obvious from this behind the scenes, but I'm not even looking at Alina or the phone. I'm looking where I'm going. I'm looking at my feet. I don't want to fall over. So the tracking capability, even for simple shots like this, stops us from having to do two things. We don't have to even look at the phone to see what's happening in terms of our composition, and we don't even have to move our hand or try and tilt the gimbal manually or physically ourselves or rotate it, anything like that, because the tracking is doing that for us. Running down a dusty hill carrying a tripod, a gimbal and a mobile phone is definitely a situation where you A, cannot look at the phone itself to see what it's filming, and B, might not even be able to look at your subject. In this instance, look at Alina, she's facing away from me riding down the hill. She's just concentrating on her own movement and her own safety, comfortable in the knowledge that the tracking is keeping a track on me, the subject. When you're faking these kind of drone shots, if you want to introduce some kind of sense of speed and motion into your shot, go on a really wide angle because the periphery of the frame moves faster than the center. So here we've gone to the 0.5 times lens on our iPhone 11. Also, ideally you want some objects in the frame that are going to move close to the camera. Look for tree branches, something like that, to enhance that sense of depth and motion as you pass through the frame. With these tracking shots on the bike, I simply couldn't do them if I didn't have the tracking capability inside the gimbal. First of all, I'm not that proficient on a bike riding one-handed holding a gimbal, and even if I was good at that, I probably wouldn't have the skill or the safety to be able to rotate a gimbal as Alina's passing through the frame, be able to look at the screen. With the tracking locked on Alina, I know that the gimbal is going to rotate irrespective of what I'm doing on the bike. If you look at this overtake shot, for example, it starts off as a simple tracking shot. Alina and I are matching speeds as we're going along, but she speeds up to accelerate past me. The gimbal is turning for me, using its tracking capability to follow Alina. I'm not going out of my way to rotate that gimbal around and try and keep her in the center of the frame. If I was looking at the phone, I would fall off my bike, I can tell you that. With this video, we've really just scratched the surface of what can be done with the Insta360 Flow and its tracking capabilities. But I want you to take away two key points. First of all, you don't always have to lock your subject in the center of the frame. You can use these tracking functions, but also have your subject off-center to create some nice compositions when you reach the end point of your nice maneuver. The second concept I want present in your mind is imagine the shots you can create if you don't have to look at your phone and the camera movement takes place anyway. So if you're a solo filmmaker, you saw a very basic example of the spotlight shot as we're moving into the frame, but we're doing it with some kind of sense of purpose, using that tracking to give us nice compositions at the end. Or if you're looking for more dynamic movement, maybe you're on a bike, for example, or some other mode of transport where you're slightly occupied doing something else, the phone and the gimbal are doing all the hard work for you. Anyway, folks, we'll leave it at that for now. Pleasure talking to you as always. Hopefully next time we'll have a little bit better acoustic treatment in the room and I can speak more loudly because that's what I'm accustomed to doing, and we will see you in the next video.